for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now hold a public hearing on the FY22 budget. We will therefore have two opportunities for public comment tonight. The first opportunity will be during the public hearing on the FY22 budget. If you wish to make a comment about the FY22 budget, please make it during the public comment portion of that hearing. If you wish to make a comment about some other matter unrelated to the public hearing, you may do so during the second opportunity for public comment. Please make sure that you noted on the comment card during which portion you wish to speak. This is the public hearing convened by the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 308 regarding the FY22 budget. At this time, I will ask each member of the Board of Education, the district's attorney, and the district administrators who will speak to identify themselves for the record.
All right. Good evening, Board. I just am happy to say that we, at our August 23rd meeting, we were able to present a tentative budget to the Board of Education, and with the purpose of putting it on public display. We had no public come into either the finance office or the central office to view the budget. It was online. I didn't receive any questions about that. But we did have some time to continue to look at the tentative budget and to work with some of the revenues and expenditures. And in the meantime, the district auditors were in, so we had some time to ask them some questions as well. So we also had an opportunity to present this at the September 20th Finance Facility Advisory Committee. And I'm happy to present you with the budget that we have today. We do have a surplus of $3.368 million, and our fund balance currently stands at about $25 million.
Okay. And now the board asks members of the public to comment on the budget. When the secretary calls your name, I ask that you come to the microphone, state your name for the public record, and provide your feedback. Please note that the comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and that neither the board nor the administration will be answering any questions during this time. Thank you for your comments.
We have no comments on the budget.
Okay. At this time, we will close the public hearing. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to thank the public for attending tonight's meeting. We value the feedback we receive from our residents and encourage everyone to take an active interest in their public school system. Residents interested in speaking to the board this evening are asked to have completed a comment card and presented it to the secretary to the board. When the secretary calls your name, I ask that you come to the microphone, state your name for the public record, and provide your feedback. I will read up to 3 email comments submitted by students only. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes per person for a total of 30 minutes. No discussion of personnel matters or responses to questions are permitted. The board does not participate in discussion during public comment. Follow-up to your questions or concerns will be addressed by administration through the contact information provided on the comment card. Thank you.
Joshua Keith.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Keith, and I am a senior here at Oswego East High School. I wanted to talk to you today about the free lunches. While we appreciate the free lunches, I would also like the opportunity to purchase items a la carte. As it is right now, we get one meal that includes a hot sandwich and sides, which consists of fruits and vegetables. I am not much of a fruit and vegetable eater, as probably the case with a lot of students, so the sandwich is pretty much all I get. I would like the opportunity to purchase additional items, such as another hot sandwich, pizza, sides, such as tips or even a salad. Right now, if we want one additional food, we must get it out of the vending machines, which is mostly junk food and only available during passing periods, outside of lunch. Any additional food I must bring from home. The free lunch program should continue, I would just like the opportunity to purchase additional items, a la carte items such as sandwiches, pizzas, salad, or chips. I do understand that these are unprecedented times and everything is new, but I also hope that things continue to change through lessons we learned as we move forward.
Thank you.
Wendy Sato. Wendy Sato.
Hi, that's me, Wendy Sato. Good evening. In light of tonight's discussion on the district's equity statements, I wanted to share some thoughts. I love the school district. I love how when my son had athletic success, Dr. Sparlin wrote a personalized letter on 2 separate occasions stating congratulations. I love how when learning was initially difficult for my daughter, that the school rallied and helped her use strategies, and now she maintains a 4.0 GPA. When we adopted my youngest and came into the school to say hello, they put an announcement on the intercom for teachers to meet him. 4 years passed, and it was time for my youngest to start kindergarten. A teacher met us at the door and without hesitation said, "Timmy, we're so excited you're finally here. We've been waiting for you." I just genuinely love the school district. Now, however, I'm genuinely scared for where it's headed. Scared that we're pushing or encouraging hate and division. And before you think, what's a blonde woman know about racism anyway? Please know that my mother is a first-generation American from Peru, and my father-in-law is a first-generation from Japan, both of whom started their education without knowing a single word of English. I get life can be hard. I grew up in a rough part of Chicago and was literally been jumped as people shouted, "Kill Whitey." I get life can be hard. Now, I don't know exactly what's being implemented, but it's clear we're trying to force division. We're trying to create victims or hatred, and that does not lead to success. We're a great school, and we're a community when we hear the words, "Once a Panther," the rest of us shout, "Always a Panther," in unison. We might have shortcomings, but they aren't solved by teaching these same Panthers that they have underlying hatred for each other that can only be resolved through a process that labels our children as bullies or victims based solely on the color of their skin. Please think about the ramifications of what you intend. Please realize that we create greatness by encouraging greatness, not by telling children they are somehow less great because of the alleged evil mindset of their friends or classmates. My children are Hispanic, Japanese, and Taiwanese. In my house, we teach pride in our heritage, pride in our schools, and the goal of reaching for the stars, but we never teach them they're victims because of their ancestry. Why don't we? Because my children are not victims. Please, please don't force teachers to tell them otherwise. Thank you.
John Wright. John Wright. Chuck Rook.
Hi, good evening, Board, Dr. Sparlin, and school administrators. My name is Chuck Rook, and I have 2 children in the district. A sophomore daughter at OHS and a son that's in the 7th grade at Trauber Junior High. First, I would like to address the transportation problem that we have here in Oswego. While I think it's great that we have a plan moving forward to allow for parents to bring their children to school when we are short on bus drivers, we need to address the elephant in the room. The elephant is mandatory vaccines and COVID-19 testing. Vaccination mandates violate personal medical freedom, and by mandating vaccines and COVID testing, we are limiting the overall pool of potential drivers who would be willing to take our children to and from school. This during an employee shortage. My next concern is the SD308 emergency learning plan, which will be discussed later tonight. According to the plan, it states that there's going to be a minimum of 5 hours of instruction. However, after a full review, I've noticed at the high school level, when you take out the passing periods, there's 33 minutes of instruction per class, which comes to only 264 minutes or 4.4 hours of instruction per day. Now, compare that to an in-person instructional day where my child would receive 48 minutes of instruction per class per day, giving them a total of 384 minutes or 6.4 hours of instruction per day. I'm highly concerned with the lack of instructional time in a remote setting and have to ask, why in the world would we ever limit our children's instructional time by a third? Our children have lost out on enough instruction over the last year and a half. They shouldn't have to lose out on even more. I want to see the remote learning time equal to the amount of instruction a child would have in an in-person day. Anything less would be a failure to our children, their future, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. Okay. We will now turn to our board member comments.
I just would like to say that I am so excited to welcome our student ambassadors this evening. And I also, we're so glad to have you here. I just want to thank and continue to thank our teachers and our principals, assistant principals, custodians, the groundskeepers, our teaching assistants, our social workers, and our bus drivers and monitors that continue to show up for our students over and over every day during this ongoing pandemic. We are so grateful to them, and we are so lucky to have them. So hang in there. We have your back, and we're all thinking of you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd also just like to bring awareness that it is National Suicide Prevention Month, and many of you have heard the term the second pandemic, as we're seeing mental health issues rise, and we know that our students and staff need our support. Also, just a reminder that we are such a great community, and to be thinking about each other, and if you see changes in behavior, whether it's your students, staff, or your neighbor, just extend some kindness and let them know your concerns. Just letting you know too that things like depression don't always present as sadness, and irritability and anger and behavior problems are signs. So if we can all have compassion for each other and look out for our kids, I just want to bring that to our attention. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that welcome to our student ambassadors, and it is my heart that you all have an opportunity to speak, to be represented. Students shouldn't just be consumers of the education that adults are presenting to them, but that you should have a voice within it. And so we are so grateful that you're here and that you'll have that opportunity.
Anyone else?
Just to kind of follow what Dr. Marino was talking about, that this is a time I'd just like to remind our entire community that our students are in a situation where for the last year and a half they've been able to kind of, as I was saying earlier, have volume control on even teachers, keeping everything at one single volume, keeping sensory input as limited as they choose and feel comfortable with. And that I would ask that our entire community take some time to give our kids some space when they get home from school, that our teachers would give our kids some space from having to answer questions when they're uncomfortable, and really focus on the social emotional health of our students, because a year and a half ago they were in a really different place than they are now, no matter what their academic abilities. So I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge that our students are going through a really rough time right now, no matter what age level they are, and that I would ask that we would all try to keep an extra thought for them and give them a little bit of extra space.
Thank you.
And welcome to our new student ambassadors.
Yes. We'll move on to the board committee reports. Can we get a report from the equity committee?
You want to say something? Oh, okay, sure. So we had our first meeting of our equity board advisory committee last week, and they had been working all of last year on their equity statements, which we discussed at the beginning of this board period, and those equity statements will be presented here tonight for us to vote on. And our equity committee you know, they're working on ensuring that all of our students are benefiting from the way we're educating them. And we have a lot of evidence that shows that not all of our students are benefiting from the way we're educating them. There was information presented at our last board meeting from Faith Dahlquist regarding some of the areas where we can improve upon individuals. And so as it relates to equity, it's not just about race, because race is not a proxy for equity. It's about so many other aspects of our students' education. And so we are here to ensure that all of our students are benefiting from the way we're educating them. And so our committee brought forth those equity statements. They worked really hard on them, and we will be looking at those tonight. And they came forth with other ideas about what they want to work on this year. And we have a committee of about 16 parents and other stakeholders from our community. And we're very excited about what they'll be working on this year. And we'll be coming forward to you with updates periodically.
All right, and our Finance and Facilities Committee?
Sure. We had actually a phenomenal, several meetings recently, and during the last meeting, we continued to focus on the school budgeting 101, because we want to make sure that we level set and that even though everyone is very well versed in educating, we had great dialogue around school budgeting 101, but to also ensure Dr. Pesky is doing an awesome job of ensuring that we're giving a sufficient overview to all of the board members so that we start, all of the committee members so that we start on a level playing field. And the benefit of doing the level setting with Budget 101 is that it sparked lots of engagement and plenty of questions that actually caused us to have some very great dialogue so that we all are on the same page. We also continue to discuss the finance and facilities of the facilities maintenance and improvement proposal, and so we're moving forward with that process, and I'm very excited about looking at and assessing all of our facilities, because as we know, they're all about 20 years old now, and Dr. Pesky actually gave an overview of that as well. And then we did go over the tentative budget, which we just had the public hearing for today, and so we're looking forward to really continuing to analyze the overall finances of the district and figuring out ways that we can not only save the district money, but also maximize what we have coming in.
Great. I'll only add to that one of the things that came up as a question that I've actually heard echoed by several people this week is the concept of community engagement and sponsorship, and our old business development director position that we'd had pre-COVID, and just renewed interest in seeing if we can get something going with that again.
The Director of Development position, Mark? Okay.
Thank you. And we have Teaching and Learning Committee.
So we had our first Teaching and Learning meeting. We have a lot of new members on that committee, so we kind of started out just with brief introductions, and then we discussed kind of what our plan is going to be for the year, which will be to kind of do a preview of presentations that the board's going to be getting, just to make sure that we're really covering information relevant to the public in a way that is accessible to them, and make sure that we're asking good questions and covering things that community members, we have a lot of teachers and parents on that committee, and we just want to make sure that when we're presenting things to the board that we're covering things from an angle that is relevant to the public, and we've got a great action plan for that, and I'm really excited to have participation from that committee. So, anything else you want to add, Jen?
No, I just want to add that we did something that I thought was very important. I think it could be utilized across any and all of our committees is we added a communication action item to the end of our agenda so that anything that was important that came out of that meeting that needed to go to specific audiences, we would have an agenda item for that. And Mrs. Dahlquist would handle the communications through however we needed to through the school system, and that we'd reach out to Teresa if it was parent facing, and just to make sure that we are communicating and keeping that feedback loop open with our community about the things that we're talking about and doing in those really important committees.
Great, thank you. Over to you, Dr. Sparley.
Well, thank you, Dr. Marino. So, good evening, board. I'd like to start off with giving a big congratulations to two of our Oswego East students. Aryaf Bothra and Zayed Khan have been named as semi-finalists in the 67th Annual 21-22 National Merit Scholarship Program. Approximately 1.5 million high school students across the country enter that National Merit Scholarship Program each year, and to qualify, students must take the preliminary SAT, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, which serves as initial screening for the program. The nationwide pool of semifinalists represents less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors and includes the highest scoring entrants in the state. So it's quite a big deal to have two students as semifinalists. So congratulations again to Aryaf and Zayed on being named semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program. The second item I would like to talk about is the two young people sitting to my right, and how excited I am to be introducing the student ambassadors this evening. Last year, when we made the announcement for this opportunity, I held 2 informational sessions with about 50 students in total. I talked about the application process and what the position was and what this position entailed. We had 22 students who applied for 2 positions, 1 student ambassador from each of our high schools, and the board screened them down to 6 applicants, and then they were interviewed by the Board of Education. One of the roles of the student ambassadors is to provide student voice to the Board of Education on issues that the board addresses throughout the year. A second part of this role is to lead the newly formed Superintendent Student Advisory Committee, which consists of the finalists, the other finalists who applied to be in this position as student ambassadors, Dr. Waller, who is the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Family Engagement, board member Mr. Gaywood, the 2 high school principals, and myself. We had our first committee meeting last week, and then we have our second committee next Monday. It's important to state that the student ambassadors serve as an advisory role to the Board of Education. They are not included in closed session meetings, and they do not vote on any action items. The ambassadors and the committee members will be working together, gathering information from our student body and making recommendations to the Board of Education on issues students identify they feel the board needs to discuss. By providing student voice to the board on issues the board ultimately makes decisions on, we will create a transformative process, enhancing what we do for the betterment of our students here in District 308. At this time, I'm going to turn the microphone over to our first ever student ambassadors to the Board of Education. Can I get a big round of applause welcoming Anya Roy and Colton Sanito?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sparlin. Hello, everyone. My name is Colton Sanito, and I am the student ambassador for Oswego High School this year. I'm a senior at OHS, where I'm a member of Youth and Government, Democracy Team, NHS, and a number of other commitments. I want to thank the Board of Education on behalf of Anya and I for choosing us to be the first student ambassadors of our high schools to the 308 board. It's been something in the works since the end of last school year, and we couldn't be happier to take on these roles and be with you all here today. I know if we've learned anything over this past year and a half as a society and as a community, it's that the more voices at the table and in the conversation, the better, and I want to applaud the board for taking the steps to make student voices heard in SD308. As a student ambassador, I will advocate to make sure every student of Oswego High School and the district feels heard, understood, and respected. We have a goal to reach out to the student body and create positive discussions about what students want to see in their district and what opinions or concerns they may have on district board decisions that affect them. One aspect of this position is to ensure all students of Oswego High School and District 308 have access to crucial information from the board as well as the board having feedback from students. This exchange creates a necessary bridge of communication between the Board of Education and the student body that benefits the entire district as a whole to be as inclusive and accessible to students as possible. Each and every day, I will strive to ensure that all voices of OHS students are heard and that they feel their voices matter, because they do. Student voice is what helps our district and community grow and evolve for the better. When you have a voice, you have an obligation to use that voice to empower others. Our voice is our greatest tool in ensuring student representation and will allow students to truly feel like an active participant in their education. Being chosen for this role is an honor, and I look forward to working with Anya and the Board of Education to provide a voice for all students in SD308. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anya Roy, and I'm a junior at Oswego East High School. I will be the student ambassador to the Board of Education representing OEHS this school year. At OE, I'm the president of the National English Honor Society, the vice president of the Model UN team, and I'm an executive board member on our Business Professionals of America chapter. I'm also involved in Science Olympiad, the Indian Student Association, the Science National Honor Society, Mu Alpha Theta, the OE Key Club chapter, and our competitive badminton team. I'm honored and grateful to have been chosen by the Board of Education to work with our students and our board to, as Colton had mentioned, shine light on student voice in our district this school year. Student voice is what will allow our board to understand the needs and opinions and ideas of our students. As we take our first steps in this newfound position as the student ambassadors to the Board of Education, I hope that we're able to pave a path for a future that emphasizes student voice as a top priority in this district. To accomplish this, the Student Advisory Committee, in our most recent meeting last week, had begun developing a survey directed at students in the district to gauge ideas, thoughts, and concerns that they may have. In implementing this survey, we are hoping to more directly communicate with the OHS and OEHS student bodies, thereby giving our board the best possible foundation for understanding student concerns and stances. We've continued to develop this survey and plan on its administration, and will continue to develop plans for student outreach to truly connect the voices of our students to the Board of Education in the future. Once again, Colton and I extend our thanks to the Board of Education for choosing us to represent our respective students as the first student ambassadors. Thank you so much.
Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve all items under consent, including 7.1, minutes of the Board of Education meeting on September 13th, 2021, open and closed session. 7.2, to acknowledge the FOIA request received by the district, and 7.3, to acknowledge the administrator and teacher salary and benefits report for FY21.
Second.
Mrs. Simulton?
Aye.
Dr. Marino?
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson?
Aye.
Mrs. Croner?
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle?
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 8.1 is informational regarding board member travel. The Board of Education adopted policy 2:125 at the regular meeting on February 27, 2017. This policy complies with the Travel Expense Control Act that became effective that year. The travel request form contains the maximum allowable amounts to be paid for the various travel expenses. These are estimates only in order to get board approval prior to travel. After the event, all receipts must be submitted to the board secretary, after which the form will be completed. The costs included to be paid for the III conference are conference registration fees, lodging, parking, tolls, and mileage. The III conference is a great conference for board members, especially new board members, to attend. The conference offers great professional development and networking opportunities, and I feel it's money well spent. Are there any questions in regards to this informational item?
We discontinued the practice of staying over at the III conference about 5 years ago, I want to say. due to budget restraints. So I guess my statement more than anything is that while I do find III to be a benefit to our community, what we've found more often than not is that the opportunities that it provides are usually on one day, and that the evening events tend to be appreciation dinners and opportunities for networking that are not necessarily something that benefit the education of the students in our community. Combined with the fact that the mandatory training that they do offer as a preliminary option to this event can be found in less costly ways, I get a little concerned when we start looking at things for ourselves to extend our own opportunities when we still have a pretty restrictive travel, not ban per se, but really we don't offer this opportunity to our educators. We don't offer this to our employees anymore. We've restricted this pretty heavily. So I feel that unless I understand more about why we would want to go back to including these expenses, I can't support adding this at this time.
The money for the conference is in the board's budget.
We choose that budget.
I think it's a this is for the board to discuss, but I do believe that for the first-time board members, I think it's a very good opportunity, as I just explained, for not only the professional development, for the networking.
Dr. Sparlin, I
what?
appreciate
Yeah.
that you find this valuable. I heard what you had to say about it before. Ruth, you were a first-time board member who also attended this with me in 2019. Did you feel the need to have overnight expenses and to stay the whole weekend?
Right, well, I will say that it was a different financial picture in 2019. We were still making budget cuts at that time.
Mhm.
I used hotel points to pay for my own hotel at the time, and I did...
We carpooled.
No, we didn't.
To III, yeah, we did. Remember, because the truck, listen guys, this is gonna get crazy. Because the truck, remember, that put the oil all over the car?
We drove home together. I think I took the train in or something. For you
Okay,
couldn't
yeah,
be
with your
there the
husband,
first
that's right.
night for some reason. I can't. I
Okay,
don't
but I
remember
think
what.
the point is about the expenses and.
But I mean, I would say I did attend, I don't know what you would call it, reception dinner thing one night, and it was free. I didn't have to pay for it. Because you often get invited to those kind of things. So my expenses were minimal to myself. I did find value in the conference. I went to several different sessions on both days that I found to be, I mean, some I thought were better than others, but that was just my personal preference. But I thought it was a great conference. I really enjoyed the speakers that they had there and the large session speakers, and I think it's great. And I hope you guys have the opportunity to go.
I think it's also very important to understand that one of the other reasons that you're there, I reached out to 2 other districts to ask their board members if they thought this conference was important, and they said one of the most valuable things is the networking that happens there with other districts, learning about where they have had maybe some of the challenges that we've had and how they've overcome them, and vice versa. So one of the things that I've seen that maybe we sometimes haven't done in the past is that kind of reaching out and that collaboration with others. And so I think that you have to look at the overall versus the macro versus the micro. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. I would say that this is a very important opportunity, especially for the new board members. I think that continuing education is extremely important, particularly for the new board members, and that we have a strong dedication to staying up to date on the topics and the education for what we need to do our job. We do feel that continuing education has been neglected for the board.
Who's we?
Because of the, I'll speak for myself.
No, I just asked what was, yeah, thanks.
Yes, the others can decide if they'd like to share that or not. sorry, I got thrown off by the interruption, but yes, it is a feeling that by myself and that that continuing education has been neglected, and we need to stay up to date on these things. I've talked with our IASB rep who encourage us to go. I've spoken to many of the other area school board presidents who highly encouraged us to go. I feel that this is a very valid expense that is in our budget that none of the new board members created, as they were not on the board at that time. Yeah, I mean, the board, it's a volunteer position, and we're just looking to do the best job that we can, and it's been highly encouraged. And as Jennifer mentioned, it has been invaluable when I've spoken to other presidents of school boards, and it is a great education for us to be able to talk with other school boards, as well as the more formalized speakers and such.
Unless anyone has something they want to add, I do want to ask though, because I've heard what each of you have to say, and I don't disagree with the point that we do need to have continuing education offered.
Did you want to say something, Latanya?
I'm listening.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure if anyone hadn't had an opportunity to speak. Eugene?
I'll let her finish.
Okay.
Why, again, the change in, because we do have a lot of employees who are still continuing in these same kind of activities that are paying for these expenses themselves, and they're not able to charge them to the district to provide those opportunities. Why are we as a board looking to add back our own expenses this way? I'm asking because this was a big discussion when this became a discontinued practice, and it wasn't because of a lack of concern for continuing education. We've had board members really delve into continuing education without having expenses. And this is a change that is worth noting because of the direction shift that this puts us in for professional development for our educators and employees as well. If we're going to have more travel expenses for ourselves and for our senior leadership as a board, then we need to talk about what are we going to be having for our employees as well, because they've missed out also. Does that make sense? So I guess that's kind of the lens I'm looking at questions with.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all, and I think those are actually two different conversations. But you know, in regards to the topic, I think that because I'm responding to one of your comments in regards to the, I think networking is vitally important, as well as the information that will be gathered from the actual conference, but being able to meet additional people so that decisions are not made in a vacuum, so that you can get anecdotal information and instances is important to any board member, not just a new board member, just so that all of the suggestions and solutions that we're recommending are not only based on the information that we obtained within a district. So, I mean, I can't speak to the value of the conference because of course I have never been, but given from what I've heard, I think it'll be a great opportunity.
Yeah, attending the conference and acting as delegates for a district, I think we've all found to be valuable, and Dr. Sparlin had discussed that as well. I'm just speaking to the extra expenses and what this says is a thing, so I don't know if you have thoughts on that aspect of things.
Yeah, point well taken. I mean, obviously, if it was a decision that was made in the past, I'm sure that it was to contextualize that decision, it was based on the budget shortfalls that we had at the time. And so I think that it's most definitely something that we should consider because we don't want to send the wrong message. However, I think that, you know, we have moved, or today is quite different. Making that decision today is quite different from the past, and we should consider whatever the the professional development needs of our teacher, staff, or whomever. I think that that's important as well. So I think that is a conversation that we should continue to have.
And I would say that our budget is balanced and there is a surplus for this year, and we should be considering these things for our teachers and staff too. We're moving, you know, moving into a different phase. And also, I would say that the education is more important now than ever with having a second year of going into a pandemic.
And then just to be clear, this conference is in Chicago, so there's no airfare. We're talking about just us driving downtown, correct?
It looks like there was lodging and mileage and, well, I'm not sure what other expenses. I'm assuming gas mileage, but lodging was the one that we had most significantly cut out. And I believe parking, if I remember right, was on here. Yeah, this is the point that I'm trying to make, is it's the concept of what have we taken from our employees, that when we put it back, are we putting it back just for us, or are we putting it back for purpose that benefits our kids?
I have a question.
With all due respect, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ellie.
I guess what I'm left wondering is, and it's a great conference, and I really think you guys should go. I mean, way back in the day, we paid for it ourselves, right? And there were also years where the district picked up. Also, again, way back in the day. So I wasn't on the board when they cut this stuff, but it is 100% well worth your time to go and meet people. But don't let III that only happens once a year be the only reason you reach out to other people. But I guess what I'm left wondering is, Lori's pretty wound up about us not doing this for our administrators, so I'm left wondering, what is it that they wanted to do that they weren't allowed to do or had to pay for themselves?
What do you mean? There wasn't anything. We made the choice. Our professional development has changed. We changed the administration and employee staff policy on travel to not allow out-of-district professional development, and we pulled it in-house. So the quote-unquote fun parts and networking that they got to do had been pulled from them, where they could reach from other teachers in other districts. We have now brought almost entirely in-house. So that's what I'm kind of talking about. We don't pay for airfare, we don't pay for hotels. I think we have a mileage limit on how far away they can go for these things. And that was it. You'll have to go back to look at the exact line items, but it was a pretty significant cut.
I guess that would be my question, not for tonight, but for another night.
I just don't want to I want to make sure that everyone has understood that the context of this is that what are we looking at as the big picture? What's the 50,000-foot view? It's not about III. It's about what are we looking at as a travel policy and a reimbursement policy, and are we going to do that just for ourselves, or are we looking to do this for our employees, and at what cost?
Allie, just out of confirmation, you paid the $400 yourself to register for the event?
No. So there've been, I think, it's been so long ago. We went a couple of times. I think when I was first new to the board, we went and the district paid for it. And then one year we went.
Conference or the travel expenses also?
I think the first year, I don't think I paid my parking and my meals, but I think the district picked up the cost. And I think the second year, honestly, it's too long ago that I don't remember. I remember we paid for our own hotel room.
I just have to say that, honestly, I'm somewhat frustrated, a little bit offended by the comments, because number one, we haven't even taken the trip yet, so you don't even know what those numbers. This is just a budget to say, here's what you have to work within. I personally wasn't going to charge for food or miles or what have you. But as a body of 7 people who work for free, because that's what we do, I am averaging about 40 hours a week that I spend as a new board member. And I don't know that I'm always doing the best job that I am. And this is an opportunity for me to find out with other people in my situation what they are doing, how they are doing, and so forth. And for such a very, very, very small amount of money, it seems like our community, our constituents, our students, our teachers, our staff would want us to be the best we can possibly be, because we are making decisions that directly affect them. So when it comes to the money, looking at, there is waste everywhere in budgets, no matter what type of an organization you are, and you look at talking talking around specific dollars and approving them or not approving them. This is such a nominal amount, and I'm not saying not to take it seriously and that it shouldn't have this discussion around it, but you have to look at the benefit and the cost for everything that we do. And I just think when you look at the number compared to the benefit that it could bring, it's a no-brainer. So those are my thoughts. And as someone who did sign up to go and to spend 2 days away from my family, you know, I'm
And away from work,
and
not
away
getting
from work.
paid.
I was just kind of frustrated that this was assumed that we're going to spend all this money, and that's frustrating to me.
So, you know, we're an institution of learning, right? And I know you're not questioning that, Lori, but I know I'm a lifelong learner, and I think everybody up here is as well. And so, in order for us to be the best that we can be as board members, we want to consume all that we can from people who have other insights and best practices to share with us. And I think that's valuable for us in terms of how we govern and policy make in this position. And so sacrifice is important. I think you're asking the question about, you know, what are we sacrificing? What are we willing to sacrifice in terms of dollars? But there's a lot of other sacrifices that happen with us. You've been here for a long time. You know all the sacrifices that you make to be a board member. And so I think sometimes sacrifices aren't in dollars, but they're in other ways. And I think that this is going to be money well spent.
Any other questions on this information item? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to 8.2. Item 8.2 is an informational item regarding our Delta Aquatics program. Tonight, Dr. Petsky is going to share some history of the program, the different aspects of the program, who it serves, information on the revenue it brings in, and to ultimately discuss with the board the thoughts moving forward. So, Dr. Petsky?
Good, thank you, Dr. Sparlin. Board of Education, just happy to present some information, some background information to allow us to discuss the Delta Aquatics program. So to begin, just for start, the program was founded in 2004 with the opening of Oswego East High School in the facility where we had a pool that we could utilize this resource. And then the rest of this slide, there's actually 3 points that I want you to see. The Delta program, Delta, Delta, Delta. Delta 1 is the program started as a Learn to Swim program. So classes are held about 5 to 6 times a month for kids in different age ranges to learn how to swim. The second Delta is a diving academy, which runs in the summertime. We have a junior diving team where kids 6 years and up can start to learn about diving. And then we've got a senior diving team, 13 years and older, where they learn both the springboard and platform diving. And on the right-hand side, you can see is really kind of the flagship of the Delta Aquatic swim team, and that's the competitive swim teams. To be a part of that, we are a member of the USA Swimming Coalition, national governing body for the competitive swimming organization. We also are affiliated with Illinois Swimming Incorporated, which is a local swimming organization. And the levels of that competitive swim team, we have a developmental group, which is just basic skill development. And then we have an advanced group, so there's basic training development. We've got a senior prep group, a little bit more progressive training. And then we have our highly competitive senior group, advanced training for students ages 15 and up. We've got some of our coaches here. We've got Timo Flores, who is our aquatics director, currently the senior coach. We have Jessica Bogie, who's an assistant aquatic director and serves as the head coach. and then Bob Sprunger, who is a lesson coordinator for the swim lessons and the head age group coach as well. They'll also bring in, these are our coaches, but I think it's important to know that the program also has some assistant coaches, and we also use some of the swimmers in our swim club who also come in and teach some of the swimming lessons. So we also pay some of the students to teach some of the swimming lessons as well. A little bit about the program, our athletes and fees. In our competitive swim team, we currently are in the short course season, which there's the 4 training groups. You can see the developmental training group, there's about 40 athletes, and the charge to be in that group is about $800. We have the advanced swim group, and there's about 41 students or athletes in that program at about $1,150 for the season. We've got a senior prep group, which has 38 athletes in it, about $1,350 for that group. And then our senior competitive team, who there's about 18 students in that group, at about $1,500 for the short course season. So that's about 137 athletes participating this season. Currently, 95 of those athletes are students and athletes who have returned to the program, participated before. 10 students have transferred from other clubs. There's several other clubs in the area. And 32 students or athletes are new this year. So this talks about the short course. And if my clicker will work. There we go. The short course kind of refers to the length of the pool. So short course is a 25-meter swimming pool. And that short course runs from September until about February. Sometimes it extends a little bit into March. And then in February or March, at the end of that season, running through July, we have the long course season. And the long course is a 50-meter pool. So regular meets during the season, they do meets about every 2 weeks during the season that the kids participate in. And then at the end of every season, there are also championship meets where the students need to qualify to participate in those meets. So in February, there will be some short course meets, and in July, there will be long course meets. We talked about some of the other teams or students from other teams. Delta Aquatics is a school-run club affiliated with Oswego 308. There's also another team, the Fox Valley Swim Club, which is Indian Prairie School District 204. They have Neuqua Valley and Wabanzi Valley and Matea Valley. They've got a swim team as well, or a swim club. There's a Maverick Swim Club, which is a private-based owned club, as well as the Academy Bullets Swim Club. And then there's also a Riptide Swim Club that's run by a park district. So I kind of selected those just to show the board that there's some school-run clubs, there's some privately owned clubs, and then there's also some park district clubs. So to talk a little bit about the revenues, I just put 3 different years of revenue and expenditures here, and the reason I chose these were specifically to show the board typical FY19 was kind of pre-COVID. So there we had some revenues, and you can see what our expenses were. And those expenses include salaries, equipment, fees, things of that nature, and it also includes maintenance of the pool. And you can kind of see the difference in the revenues and then the expenditures that we have. In FY20, when with the onset of COVID, we kind of got through the short course season, and there were some questions about being able to maintain some of the procedures for COVID and whatnot. It hit in that FY20 school year. So you can kind of see it impacted the long course season. So we saw some less revenues, and then our expenditures were a little bit less as well that year. And then in FY21, this last year, you can see with COVID, for a full year with that impact, there were fewer swimmers. We typically have about 180 kids in the program, and now we're averaging about 130. So, we're seeing those students starting to come back into the program. So you can see the revenues and the expenditures there. When we do talk about the Delta Aquatics finances, I think it's important to note that the pool maintenance fees range from about $32,000 to $36,000 annually. And then as you can see, there's a little bit of revenue too. There's about $10,000 worth of revenue that the program brings to the district as well. So when we look at options for the future and what the Delta Aquatics team could be, status quo, kind of maintain what we have. The school district could maintain ownership and oversight of the Delta Aquatics program, the coaches, the athletes, and then maintain the pool and facilities. So there I'm saying about $45,000. Again, it's about $32,000 to $36,000 in pool maintenance that we would have to do with our own gym programs and our own, there's a Oswego boys and girls swim club as well that we run. So there's still maintenance to the pool and things. Then another option for the future is just pool rental. We could investigate other programs that we talked about, other ways of organizing those swim clubs. We would still have to maintain the pool facilities through rental agreements. And again, we would look at about $45,000 to maintain what we have now. Or a third option would be just to absorb the cost. So the pool would only be used for the Oswego Co-op swim and dive teams and physical education programs, and then pool maintenance costs would be absorbed into the school district expenditures. So like I said, we currently have about $32,000 to $36,000 in pool maintenance, and then we also have that extra $10,000 in revenue that we typically see that we would want to recapture as well. So that just gives you a really high level presentation about a little bit of history, a little bit of context, some of the finances, the coaches, a little bit of pool maintenance, and some future options. So on that, I'd like to turn it over and see if there's any discussions or questions that the board might have, or if there's any additional information that we might look at bringing you.
It's been really unclear who's really responsible for Delta and who oversees the coaches and the program, and can you clarify that?
Yeah, in my time being in the district, I'm just told that the CFO, the finance department, through the revenues and the expenditures in the program and whatnot, the responsibility for oversight of that program has kind of fallen in the business office. But I think really what it comes down to as well is I think that we had a coach, and they've been with the program since the pool has been open, and we've allowed that person to run the program on their own and just assumed that the program was running itself without a lot of oversight. So I know one thing that I would look at doing in the current situation that we're in is at least auditing or touching base with that program at least twice a year to find out how we're doing, and to really kind of audit and oversee that program a little bit more.
I understand that a CFO would oversee the financial pieces of this program and as a business, but I'm not understanding that responsibility for overseeing an athletic program and coaches and the issues that come there.
Yeah, and I think probably to better answer that question, I didn't want to reach out to a lot of people about the program without first coming to the board. But knowing that that is a question that we want to have answered, I would like to reach out to Indian Prairie 204 and talk to their swim club. How is it organized there? How do they manage it there? And find out what is that balance between a school district overseeing the club versus the coaches running the club, and just find out what that relationship is like. So that's definitely something I can follow up with.
My understanding, and I don't have extensive understanding of each of these teams, but my understanding seems to be that the ones that are operated through schools may have a parent board that oversees those things, and I believe Delta hasn't had any sort of parental oversight or a parent board or anything like that in the past. I also think I know that for the Bullets, that's what they do, is the rental thing. Have we been approached by the Bullets team about renting our facility?
Not about, not necessarily about renting the facility, because the facility is prioritized based on several categories. Like if it's a school event, if it's a school-sponsored event, if it's somebody affiliated with the school district. And since Delta is affiliated with 308, the pool has not been available for rent because they use it year-round. So I don't know if they've approached us about using it, but if they did, we don't have enough hours to be able to give to them to run another swim team there.
Assuming that we have the Delta Aquatics program running under the school authority.
Correct.
Have we hired a replacement coach?
We've got three interim coaches now. That's Timo and Jessica and Coach Bob. So.
And have they been given contracts of any sort for this? Non-contract employees, how are they employed in our district? Like, what is their employment classification?
They are employees of the district, and they work for us to run the Delta Aquatics program. So their salary is paid for out of the Delta Aquatics program, the revenues that it generates. So the district doesn't creating their own revenue, and that's kind of the balance or the financial oversight. Is the program cost neutral? Is it cost effective, or is it actually costing the district money?
So did they get a check from the district, or do they get a check from the program?
They get a check from the district through the money that they bring in. They deposit every month. They deposit their revenues into our district account. So we budget for them, and based on the revenues that we expect them to bring in.
So I appreciate that you have stated that your intentions are to audit this program twice a year. Has it ever been audited before? To your knowledge?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Now, I do know, I couldn't imagine the program got this far along without the business office being aware of what are the revenues, the expenditures, and what does it cost. Because we do have budget lines specifically built in that are specifically for the Delta Aquatics program. So you can go back into the finance system and see what's happening there.
But no one's actually audited it before to see, because I've been to a lot of swim meets, and there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of parents making donations of items and obviously time, but there's a lot of cash changing hands. There's meat fees, and there's
cash boxes,
concessions, there's cash boxes. Like, if there's no oversight, and up until this point, do we believe that it's been one individual that has had sole oversight into how all of that is happening? Okay, that's what I thought.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is there's a specific, all of these teams, if you look at all these teams online, they'll direct you to their Team Unify website. So
yes,
all of the
I'm
payments and things
Team
like
Unify.
that come through Team Unify. So to be a member, to be an athlete on the club, you can either pay the one-time fee for the whole year that goes into the Team Unify account and then comes into the district, or you can pay on a monthly basis.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Okay.
And I also know that there are, in addition to how much they're paying to be part of the program, there's also additional meat fees, there's travel expenses, there's concessions, there's
uniforms.
Definitely
Spirit wear,
uniforms,
all the things.
All the things, lots of things. I'm just saying,
extra janitorial responsibilities for cleaning up, all the stuff.
I'm kind of with you ladies and saying, like, I understand why there needs to be financial oversight by the finance department, absolutely. But I also feel like that could be a full-time job in itself. You know, I think we definitely should have some sort of parent board. It should have some sort of oversight by, I don't know, an athletic director, since it's an athletic program. I realize that it's not part of our IHSA programs. It's a club, so it's a little bit different. in finding out more, this is a great program. We have highly successful student athletes who have come out of this program and are currently in the program, and I think it's phenomenal that we are utilizing our facilities for our students. I hope that we can continue to do that, but we've got some work to do to make sure that going forward we have that culture that we want in our district, that we have parent involvement, we have some student voice. You know, you say the program brings in $10,000 in revenue. How do we know that? Like, other than just the basics, like who's monitoring that, all that cash? It's a lot of cash, I can tell you, going in and out. So I just want to like make sure you're aware as you're looking further into it. You mentioned on slide 7 and said a couple of times that you felt like maintenance fees were around $32,000 to $36,000, but slide 8 estimates those at $45,000.
Yeah.
Same question.
Okay. just
That's
curious.
with, again, that's the pool maintenance fees. What I'm looking at is the whole financial picture. So the pool maintenance fees range from 32 to 36, but then we take an additional $10,000 in revenue from that program. So I would want to continue to maintain that. So we would be looking at least a $45,000 revenue. For instance, if we rented it out, was doing the math, you know, at rental prices, it's about 300 hours in rental time for the facilities. And in addition to that, we would probably be looking at some custodial costs and things of that nature as well.
So that leads me to wonder, like Ruth's saying, this is a full-time job. So we basically have two options. Either as a district we can choose to maintain this ourselves, and we'll have to talk about what that would look like and have Dr. Petsky look into it. But the other option is, because there are organizations that do rent these facilities, I do know that the Bullets is one of them that will rent school pools. The point of having a pool team, I believe, if I remember correctly, is that it kind of not only covers the annual maintenance costs, but for example, we had a pretty expensive rehab of the pool several years ago, and it helps defray some of those costs too. Is it, as a district, worth our time to have somebody else handle that, and all we become is, like people would say, the landlord, and we don't have to deal with not only the financial aspect and all the different kinds of cash and this and that, but also the performance evaluations of the employees working with our kids and the liabilities that go along with that? Do we want to handle that? So that would be the two things I would consider.
So I would like to add to that I believe the Vaughn Center used to rent out to possibly to the Bullets.
Could be. I know that they do this.
Have
yes.
multiple teams in like different parts of the state. It's a big program.
Okay.
And I think it was the Bullets who used to rent the Vaughn Center, but now the Vaughn Center has an in-house team. That's the Riptides. So I would definitely try and speak to whoever it was that was in charge of that decision to move from renting to having an in-house team. Were there financial components that went into that decision, and why? And then 204 also rents, like they don't have an in-house team, they rent out to the Fox Valley Club. So they made a different choice. So is that because of the oversight situation that was more, you know, a park district facility having an in-house team is a little bit different than a school district. So I would encourage you to look into those.
Today was I was going to say is meant, you know, for information, and we wanted to start the conversation, but we also need some direction on, you know, what it is that the board would like us to look into, to report back on. You know, like as you said, Lori, do we want to talk to some of these other programs that, you know, to take, to come in and to rent our facility, and so we don't own our own program anymore? If that's something we definitely want to hear that from you so we can go out and start having those conversations, as well as talking, like Dr. Petsky said, 204 and how do they run it, and oversight, management, everything, because this is definitely a full-time job from somebody.
Yes.
And it's and he's got a full-time job.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So
Right.
another
Well,
question.
if I can just say that all of this is great. I do think we need to understand what the best practice is and what has worked and not worked. But I will tell you that throughout this year, this school year, what has happened because of whether it be past oversight or lack of oversight or whatever it might have been, we really let down our students this year. We let them down because we did not have a process in place, auditing in place, and their swim year has been affected greatly by that. So whatever we do moving forward, we must ensure that the swimmers are not affected by how this program is run like it was this year. I'm just really, I feel bad for them, and I'm frustrated that it came down to how this program was managed, hurting them. So however we move forward, I want to make sure that the checks and balances are in place, the auditing is in place, so that it doesn't affect our students.
Yeah, that, you know what, Jen, the conversation Dr. Petsy and I had today was exactly that. And we talked about the time frame that we would, whatever direction that the board gave us today, to make sure that our investigation fits in with that time, within that time frame, to ensure that the kids in their current season, if we were to go a different direction, wouldn't be negatively affected in the future.
So one additional question to that, because my thought is, why did we choose to bring Delta Aquatics on as a district in the first place? And so not that we have to answer that question, but it's a question that we must consider, because if we then switch to outsource it, what will be the implications of that? What will be the implications of that? Which I'm okay with that, but we need to consider it for the the benefit, because was there a benefit to the students to bring it in? And then what would the adverse effect be if we do outsource it? Is it a benefit to outsource it to the district? Maybe. But what would be the impact to the students if we outsource it? So I just want to make sure that we consider why we did it in the first place in the decision, and then of course, then what would be the best for both?
Make sure that we have the bandwidth for the appropriate oversight, because that hasn't happened. And just a quick question, these other clubs that are listed, we're the only one that's district owned, is that correct?
Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, because I believe Mavericks is a parent organization, they're out of 203. Fox Valley is out of 204. They only allow their own school district swimmers, but I didn't realize that they weren't school owned. I thought they were.
No, I think
they
that
are.
the Fox Valley Swim Club is school owned. I'll double check on that one, but that's
That one I wasn't sure of, but
Yeah.
that we do allow swimmers from outside the district, which is what has been part of what has made it profitable, is that we can expand the numbers where other ones can't, because we have the ability to do that, I guess. I don't really know, but Riptides is Park District. Bullets is a chain.
Okay.
Maverick, I think we're the only ones. I would hope that there would be documentation somewhere. I believe that this, if I remember correctly, was Todd Colvin, Dr. Sparlin, he was your predecessor in the HR area, maybe? Maybe there's some documentation on when this began that we could understand more about it.
It's just very different, as you said, for a park district to own a swim club than a school district. So I think what we're asking is, in those three options, it feels like we have a lot of questions about all three options, and those need to be investigated to understand, do we have the oversight? What's the benefit to the district and especially our students, and what's the cost in both for liability for our students?
Yeah. And I don't know if any of those, I'm sorry.
No,
Sorry,
go ahead.
No.
Latania's been waiting.
One of the things that I think about is when we built the school, right? We decided we wanted to have a pool. And so when you think about why do you want to have a pool, and how are we going to absorb the cost of having a pool, I would imagine it has something to do with the fact that when we have, for our students, are there any fees associated with them taking swim?
Yes.
Swim, right? Do those costs not cover our, what you said, $45,000 in maintenance and pool and facilities? Do those fees not cover it?
They do.
Well,
Okay.
it's, those are other fees, kind of like course fees, and they go into the course fee allocation. It doesn't necessarily, those fees aren't necessarily, the revenues there aren't associated with the expenditures of the pool maintenance.
So then they don't
So-
cover it.
I think it would be interesting, though, to look at what are the fees that we bring in
Yeah.
for the physical education
they have
courses,
covered
right?
it.
Okay.
And it might be that we've hit the tipping point with the number of kids involved. That's a really good point, because at 200 kids, maybe it covers the costs and makes the pool, and that's why it covers the pool expenses, but at 100 kids, it might not.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's where I'm trying to go
I
with this
see.
in terms of maybe understanding some context, because Eugene brought it up and I brought it up. You know, why did we do this in the first place? And if it was to absorb the cost of this pool and the facilities, or to have additional revenues on top of that, then I understand it. But if we can cover our fees, you know, by our students, then why are we wanting to be in the business of owning a swim team?
I think there is
swim
one
club.
small, though, it's not small. I think there's actually a point that needs to be considered that's very important. If you're a swimming family and your student is a swimmer, this is an opportunity for them to earn scholarships for college. So I think it's very important that we, especially Dr. Petsky, when you're looking into these options, that we have this place for swimmers to be able to earn scholarships. And we've had a very successful program. I think that's important to state. And so I want to make sure we don't lose that.
I hear that. I just want to understand, well, we have a basketball team, and we have a football team, and we've got all these other teams, and we don't have this apparatus and this
Yes.
structure, and they still get scholarships.
Yes, agreed.
So I don't
Agreed.
understand, right?
But I don't want the program to suffer because of the decision that we make.
Yep.
So I think I only have one other question for right now. I know I've emailed you a couple of things, but I appreciate that this is just coming to us tonight for the first time for discussion. At what point would we consider having, you know, we've talked about the importance of having a parent board. At what point would we consider having a discussion or getting feedback from parents who currently have students in the program, and just getting their opinion and their feedback, and why are you sending your kids to this program? You know, what, you know, I think it would be valuable for us to get some feedback from parents at each of those different developmental levels, training group levels, and maybe even some of our students too. I think they probably have a lot to say about what they would like to see going forward and what's important to them.
Could you, well, that's actually an excellent point. I mean, really, this is a program that is most affecting our students, like Jen had said, and is paid for by parents. It feels to me like it would be really wrong for this conversation to continue much further without including the current parents that are in the program right now. I know that it makes sense we would have to, I know you had to make a temporary plan for this season, but I also don't feel like we should just let this go indefinitely. I think that our parents and students deserve, like, we will make a decision before the long course season, or we will make a decision before next short course. But can we please
Get their input.
get their input first and what they'd like to see?
Because I think our decision shouldn't solely be based on finances. I
Agree.
think it needs to be also based on what's best for the community and the students.
And I think also another group to add in there, I definitely hear feedback from students, feedback from parents, and I'd like to have more conversations with the coaches. So, and talk to the coaches about, they've got a history with the program, where they've been. I do know a lot of parents come back to the program. They seek out Delta because it's built a reputation for a quality swim program. And so I definitely think by bringing those three groups of people together and talking about their history, where they've been, where they are, and involving, I know our coaches know our families.
But ask them where they want to go.
What's that?
Just ask them where they want to go.
What do you mean, where they
it's
wanna
great
go?
to understand where they've been, but ask the families where they want to go with this.
With swimming. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, does the administration feel that they have enough direction from the board?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Is it okay with the board to move on now? Thanks.
All right. Item 8.3 is our final item under information this evening, and that's in regards to what we need to have an approved e-learning plan. So if we have to call school for inclement weather, we can have the option of making it an e-learning day. And Faith is going to take us through that process.
All right, great. Well, there goes the presentation. I just want to make sure that we're being very clear. I've presented, more remote learning plans in the last year and a half that I care to count. This is a very specific type of learning plan. Over 5 years ago, the state of Illinois allowed for a provision for districts to put in plans ahead of time, so that in lieu of a snow day or a emergency closing due to cold weather, we would have this option. So what we are talking about this evening is possible plans. We do not have to use them, but they would be available in lieu of those 5 emergency days for usually weather that happens within Illinois. This is not a type of plan that is the remote learning like you would do for a long period of time. There are very different guidelines and provisions from the state that differentiate the two different types of learning plans. So I know the state calls it e-learning plans. I'm putting in E means emergency, just to try to make more sense for us. So why have this? It could be useful, but not imperative, to be able, when Dr. Sparlin gets the call at 5:30 in the morning, to have some choices. Hopefully it's before 5:30 in the morning, to decide, would today be better to institute this type of plan or to close school down? So this would give us an option if we were to approve this. The timeline that we're looking at is being able to talk about it tonight, bring it back for a public hearing on October 12th. Then after this, it then goes to the Regional Office of Education, and then they would approve it, and then we need to post it and have it available for parents and staff 30 days in advance of any time that we would use this plan. Some of the guiding principles that the state of Illinois uses is it's a minimum of 5 clock hours of instruction or schoolwork, very similar to our school improvement days where we run those for 5 hours, which does include the passing periods. Another provision that is super important is that we need to have access for all students. It does not allow us to go to completely electronic or computer device instruction unless all of our students have that access at home to a device. So looking at that at our early childhood level, not all of our early childhood students have devices, so this is a sample of a schedule. It would be activities sent home in advance, supported by teacher office hours, because not all of our early learning students have devices. So this is a sample schedule. Parents or caregivers could create their own schedule, but we would have teacher office hours for phone, email, or Google Meets during designated times if there were questions or support needed with the choice boards. We are looking at having our teachers create 5 days of these in advance and having them be sent home with students, so that if that call comes early in the morning, there would already be preparation done and those activities would be at home. The next piece is for elementary. Obviously, not all of our elementary students have devices either, so this would be a possible schedule. They again would have activities sent home in advance by a teacher and then supported through office hours. It's different at our secondary level. We have devices that all of our students have, so we envision going through the regular junior high and high school shortened day schedule. so that all students would have time via Google Meets with each of their teachers and activities. Here's what the junior high schedule would look like, and then the high school schedule. These are schedules that are already in existence that we run on our school improvement days. And while you're thinking of questions, I do want to really thank Lindsay Allen and Shannon Luters, who took the lead on this, as well as a lot of our ed services directors, and then our OEA union leadership also met a few times to discuss this plan as well.
I have one question.
Sure.
It's really probably a point of clarification for me. Early childhood, you said that it would be sent home in advance, but I'm thinking emergency situations you don't know in advance. So is that snow day automatically, or how would you know in advance?
So,
weather report?
No, what we were envisioning, so there'd be a lot of literacy or numeracy activities that we could write now that students could even use in a month. So it wouldn't be, hey, tomorrow might be an emergency day, everybody take this home. It would be teachers working on this over the next month and then sending these things home and having them be available in the possibility that we would have a day.
So it would still be contingent upon the parent keeping up with it in case that emergency day came.
Correct. Hopefully we might have a little, hey, there's a snowstorm coming, we want to remind you, see where those are, where your materials are, and we will post those on the website, but of course that's problematic for those people that don't have a device.
I have a question, but I really want to hear from you two on this.
I already
I'll
told
let you
them
go
to
first.
think about questions that they might have.
Where do you guys sit? Our student ambassadors?
One clarification question that I would have would be, so this is for days in which it would be, for instance, just weather related? I mean, or for instance, like what we had last week with the busing situation, would this be something that would be applied to that?
That's a good question.
We are looking at this mostly for weather pieces. With our transportation, as we wrote the different options, we want to have our elementary students in and want to not close down the whole district, or this is mostly if we had to close down everything. So I guess that's a possibility with the transportation piece, but we certainly hope not.
We need to have this if we are to have an option. If we don't go through this and have this plan approved through the Regional Office of Education, then there is no option. And I think Faith emphasized the word option because it's not the greatest option for our youngest learners. I think for 6 through 12, where we have one-to-one devices, it's a wonderful opportunity. So. And go back to the question, though.
Yeah, how do you feel about a 50?
Yeah, how do you feel?
Do you want to call off snow days for the rest of your peers? I mean, no pressure. No, I'm just
Would you rather have a snow day, or would you rather have an e-learning day that counts and we don't have to add on to the calendar at the end of the year?
That's the key part.
Yeah, at the end of the year.
The school year.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a good part.
Okay, I have no idea how the students I'm representing will feel about this, but as like a dedicated student, I do think that this is a great alternative. I think everyone, like speaking from like the student eye, we all like our snow days. Feels great. It's a good break, but I think this is a way that actually emphasizes like maintaining an education despite these kind of like unforeseen circumstances. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm really glad that it was brought up. But I did have one also clarification question. It was brought up that for younger students, these materials would be given to them prior to these like emergency events actually happening. Would this be given like in schools by teachers, or would it be sent out to parents? Because I know at times, depending on if the parent can keep up with these kind of commitments for their children at school, this might not be as applicable. So will it be given to students at school?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Faith, why is lunch part of instructional minutes of the 5 hours?
So on your junior high and high school periods, people have lunches at different times, and that is all part of the instructional day. So sometimes it's 4th period, 5th period, 6th period. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
7th period.
I would also add that at the high school level, their lunch period is kind of divided in half, and one half they go to lunch, and the second half they have
Guided study.
So kind of like a study hall.
Yeah.
So, and that is either at the beginning of your lunch period or at the end of your lunch period, so.
So of the,
I don't know if it's really instructional minutes, but.
well, I
you
guess
get
that's what
homework
I'm just, and like for the elementary, for instance, so I get that part, but for why is it, I guess my question is, they're at home, so why are we not using that 30 minutes? They need a break. I'm not saying they don't need a break, but why isn't that 30 minutes instructional to get to the 5 hours?
So you're saying why aren't a teacher teaching during their lunchtime?
Not during the lunchtime, but why is it, does the 5 hours mean 9 to 2? Like it has to be, it's the time? Or is the 5 hours instructional minutes?
It's the length of the instructional day, so it's not
Okay.
instructional
Okay.
minutes.
But I
Just
think,
like our school improvement day, it has to be a 5-hour day. So that's, yes, that's still counting lunch, that's still counting passing periods, those pieces.
okay. But I think what you're saying, Jen, is like, if you work for an employer and you get scheduled for 8.5 hours
Correct.
because that half hour doesn't count
Correct.
towards your work.
They're at home.
Yeah.
So I don't
So
think
you give them
an
the
hour
30
of
minutes,
lunch.
but it doesn't count.
Why not have extra 30 minutes of instruction or guided study? I mean, I'm fine with that. I just, that doesn't make, I would want to get as many instructional minutes as possible.
I agree. This is something I don't understand why we shorten the periods. You know, I have 2 high schoolers at home. I don't understand why they're ending early on a remote day, and then if that replaces a full day, it's just more instruction that they're losing. So I have those concerns. And especially with our elementary kids too, because they were hit so hard last year.
Well, in our elementary day, they don't, in this plan, have synchronous instruction with their teachers at all because they don't have devices to be able to do that. So they have no live time with their teacher unless the parents call in with questions or go through that time because they don't have devices. That's one of the problems with us rolling this out, is there are more opportunities where we have devices than at the elementary where we do not. When you look at the amount of minutes, yes, there's that live time, but as you know, even with regular school day, there are activities or homework or assignments that are given that are in addition to what happened during those times, that we would still want students to have the opportunity to do that. So instructional minutes at the state level, even if it's student work that's assigned outside of those periods, that counts toward time spent. For example, at elementary, it's all homework and assignments that are given that are counting toward these hours. If we wanted to pursue having a full class periods for junior high and high school and having that great of a difference between that and elementary and even expand that, we can.
So this is the ISB minimum. So
Correct.
if we wanted to have 300 minutes versus 270, we could.
We couldn't go longer than the teacher contractual day. We're bound by that.
And I thought the district had purchased enough Chromebooks for each student. Is that not correct?
That's in grades 5 through 12.
5
That
through
is not in K through 4. And definitely not at the Early Learning Center.
Sure.
But I would like to see 5th grade included. I'd like to see it go 5 through 8 on our plan. If they have Chromebooks, there's no reason why they can't go.
Yeah. And they're old enough developmentally to be able to handle some online learning, more so certainly than a first grader.
I realize that creates an issue with elementary.
Correct.
In a perfect world, I would like to see, again, I teach high school. I can appreciate it. The kids are okay with it. It's better than no school.
Well, I would like to say that I think it's a little bit sad that we're getting rid of snow day. Even though
And so you have
I
to
mean,
add it on at the end.
especially at the elementary level, because hello, who doesn't like to play out in the snow? However, certainly at the high school level with finals and the dates where things lay, it definitely would benefit high schoolers to not have snow days added into the calendar.
Well, it's an option that we didn't have a couple years ago that we
Right.
now have, so.
Yeah, I mean.
But
my
we
kids would
only
probably-
have to add days onto the calendar if you use more than 5, isn't that right?
We would have to add another school day. There are 5 emergency days
make
built
them up.
into the end of the year, but if we took a cold weather day in February, the day that the students get out would go a day later
Okay.
without a plan like this put in place. So
Yeah.
it doesn't extend the school year calendar, but for students and parents that are looking at what is the last student attendance day, it would extend that. Does that
Right.
make sense?
5 days have to be made up. Anything after that doesn't.
It's great. I appreciate the work put into the plan.
So I'm not sure what the
Yeah,
guidance
we need
is
some.
for
Yeah,
next.
we need some clear guidance on this. So we want to look at 5th grade, like Ellie just said. We had some discussion on lengthening, making the 6-12 a longer day or more the full normal day. Is that what you'd like us to look into, or?
I'm a yes on that for a full day.
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to see the full day.
Okay. Okay.
All
I'd
right,
like to play in the snow and take a 5-hour day.
Say that again, Ellie.
She wants to play in the snow and have the 5-hour day.
But clearly that's not going to happen, and it's not in my,
Right.
it's not in my
So,
cards.
Ally, with your suggestion about 5th grade, are we putting 5th through 12th?
Well, I guess
in
that's a
that
contract
full
issue, I think,
day?
probably, because it's K-5. I think there's probably more to that than just,
Okay.
hey, let's add 5th grade.
Okay.
I don't know, where are our kids at with, what do you think about lengthening the day? You're here for a reason.
I would say, like for instance, last Tuesday, was it? If I remember. We had a full day, and I think it was great, like Dr. Sparlin said, that we had the ability on a moment's notice in the morning to switch over like that, and it made it easy to go that entire day. You know, everybody having a Chromebook and access to live meets and stuff like that. That definitely, in some weird way, that was a benefit of the pandemic, of knowing exactly what to expect on those days. And you know, as high schoolers, yes, we all love a day off, and I love a day off, but you know, like was mentioned, we also don't like making them up at the end of the year. And also the struggles that we're having as students, I think it's important to have as much instruction as we can and support time that we can. And so for me, I would say that an entire day online would be beneficial to us as students.
Yeah, and I was trying to think about how it felt when we were in like complete quarantine. Like I stayed completely virtually. I know a lot of other people did too. A lot of students did that as well. And I was comparing kind of like those shortened days to the longer days, and I was thinking about that in my head. Having those longer periods is beneficial not only for, I think, students, but for teachers as well. You actually cover the content a lot better when you have a little bit more time to roll with. And I think that even if it's just one day, right, like Colton said, making it up at the end of the school year, it's not fun, right? When you have things like AP classes, right, you have to study enough for an AP exam that doesn't move because you had a snow day. You have to do finals, you have to do midterms. Trying to catch up throughout the year is a lot harder. And I definitely think that having those elongated days, especially now that we have more experience with kind of that virtual setting, it's a great option. And I'm glad that like we finally have that, even if it was through kind of like a bad experience with COVID.
Yeah, and especially with, like, for instance, AP classes, the teachers and students were required to cover certain information within a time frame. So when we lose out on instruction, even on days, you know, late start Wednesdays when, you know, if I have a second hour AP class, it's shorter than if I had a fourth hour AP class. And I would say that definitely for AP classes is you have a certain amount of information that you have to cover because it will be on your AP exam. They don't, College Board doesn't care if you had snow days, if you missed out on an instruction. It's expected of you as students and as our teachers to cover those topics because they're going to be on the test no matter what. So I think it's important that when there's that opportunity to, especially for any kind of, I mean, any class in general, to not lose out on an instruction, or live instruction would be beneficial to us.
Yeah, Faith, I appreciate you doing the work because I think we all would agree if it's one snow day, we can get past. But if it's as predicted, a bad winter and we have 10 snow days, then this plan would be extremely beneficial to have in place already.
All
I
right.
like that point about the content. I hadn't thought of that at all, that the AP exam is going to cover the same content in the shorter day. You miss 10 minutes of that, and 10 of those days can really add up.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Agreed.
We are very lucky to have them on this board.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Faith, did you have the information that you need? I think you do, right? Okay, that's our last informational item for this evening. Thank you.
All right, so we're moving on to our action items. 9.1, adoption of FY22 budget. Can I get a motion for the adoption of the FY22 budget?
I make a motion to adopt the FY22 budget for the Oswego Community Unit School District 308 as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Dr. Marino,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Can I get a motion for the approval of Envision 308 facility and maintenance proposal?
I make a motion to approve the Envision 308 strategic facility proposal at a cost of $69,450,000 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
No.
Mrs. Swanson,
No.
Dr. Marino,
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-2. Can I get a motion for the approval of the equity belief statements?
I make a motion to approve the equity belief statements as presented.
Second.
Can we talk about this one before we vote on it?
Mm-hmm.
So I know I was not the only one to get an email from Mr. Pope and Ms. Sato, who spoke earlier today too. So I still am struggling with some of the verbiage, and I really liked what he sent today. In particular, Mr. Pope had some pretty good comments. I think under the racism, he took out injustices that lead to, and he put in the sources of these, which I thought summed that up really well. And then instead of marginalized, he had protection of identities, which I also appreciated. So I guess my question is, if everybody else is okay with it, then we could just vote. But I would like to table it, maybe talk about it one more time before we commit.
Are you thinking you want to kick back some of those ideas to the equity committee?
Yeah,
again,
did the
or-
equity committee talk about them this last week?
Yes, they did.
We did briefly talk about them.
How briefly?
Well, we got a thumbs up on every
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, we talked about these a lot. There was a significant amount of time that went in, but that individual was not on that committee, nor had they come to any of the meetings or provided feedback. And I get it that people don't know when things are happening, because we're all busy. You know, I feel like my perspective is I know I feel like I have a good handle on where they're coming from, if that makes sense. Like the intent behind them is to include all students, is like the spirit of it is very positive, and it's not about racism, you know, it's about all of our students, no matter their shape, size, color, the way that they learn. All of those different things were taken into consideration when we discussed them. If the board as a whole would like us to take a look at those proposals again, like, we would.
Again, I just preferred the words, the sources of these, instead of the injustices.
And one of the things that we did talk about in the committee was the fact that this isn't something that could never change in the future. Like,
it's living and breathing.
Right.
Right, but we're adopting it as it is right now.
You're
So
right.
I guess my question is, and you guys could say no, I just, I'd like to make a motion to table it and send it back and just maybe talk about it one more time.
One of the things that we did talk about too was that we want to get it right. You know, we want to do it right, but we also don't want to. We could talk about it forever and ever.
We have been, yeah.
So.
Did you make a motion to table it?
I did. Does anybody want a second?
I'll second it. We should vote on whether or not we table it.
Okay.
Mrs. Doyle?
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson?
Aye.
Mrs. Croner?
I don't know what we're doing.
This is
Yeah,
just
I
to
wanna
table
clarify.
it.
This is a
So-
motion whether we table it.
So I is to
saying
table
aye
it.
or
I
nay
is
to
to
table.
table it
Aye or nay
and
to
take it back for
table
more
it, and we
conversation.
come back
Good
to
good
discuss
question.
it.
Nay.
Mrs. Simulton?
Nay.
Mr. Gatewood?
Nay.
Mrs. Johnson?
Nay.
Dr. Marino?
Aye.
Motion fails,
Motion
3-4.
fails, yeah.
Motion fails 3-4.
So, did you already make the motion and get it seconded?
So now it's
I-
time for the motion.
I did make
Since
a
we
motion to-
we are
Yeah.
not tabling it, so now we would take the motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the equity belief statements as presented.
Second.
Dr. Marino?
I just have to say that I do prefer the sources leading, but I will say aye.
Mrs. Doyle?
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson?
No.
Mrs. Simulton?
Aye.
Mrs. Croner?
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1. Can I get a motion for the approval of MOU with the OTA?
I make a motion to approve the MOU with the Oswego Transportation Association as presented.
Do we have a second?
Oh, second, sorry.
Anyone?
Mrs. Croner?
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson?
I'm approving the MOU as presented on 9/13.
Dr. Marino?
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson?
Nope.
Mrs. Doyle?
No.
Mrs. Simulton?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-2. Can I get a motion for the approval of the personnel report?
I make a motion to approve the personnel report as presented.
Second.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle?
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson?
Aye.
Dr. Marino?
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton?
Aye.
Mrs. Croner?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Did I get too excited for that? Can you take a picture?
My son.